Hey guys, tonight we're marching straight into the frostbitten madness of history's most misunderstood combatants, the winter soldiers. You're standing ankle deep in snow, so cold it creaks when you shift your weight. Your breath is a ghost in the dark. Around you, bundled shadows mutter in rhythms of coughs, prayer, and mild regret. Welcome to a world where war doesn't pause for the weather, and where people once believed that winter soldiers weren't just hardened, they were enchanted. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? I love seeing who's out there huddling under blankets like medieval infantry with Wi Fi. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward, boots stiff as boards, every toe an ongoing negotiation between numbness and pain. Your coat is heavy, lined with fur soaked with snow, and smelling faintly of campfire, wet wool, and something that might be despair. But here's the odd thing: no one around you is shivering. In fact, they don't even mention the cold. Why? Because you've just joined a battalion that believes the cold can't touch the righteous. Yes, one of the most bizarre and weirdly persistent beliefs among some winter soldiers was that their loyalty warmed them. Quite literally, patriots, they said, didn't freeze. Only cowards did. If your hands went blue, it wasn't hypothermia, it was weak moral fiber. The solution: more loyalty. Maybe a song, possibly shouting at snowbanks. There are diaries, real ones, from soldiers in places like Valley Forge or the Eastern Front that don't complain about the temperature, but instead wax poetic about standing firm in the Lord's warmth, or feeling the fire of honor in the marrow. Meanwhile, they're missing half a toe. The honor, it seems, hadn't quite reached the extremities. You look over and see a fellow soldier, steam rising off his shoulders, face pink with windburn. He's grinning, says he hasn't felt cold in weeks. You glance at his fingers. They're the color of blueberry jam. He nods solemnly, as if the frostbite is a badge of spiritual achievement. You're not sure whether to respect him or ask if he's seen a doctor recently. Spoiler, he hasn't. But he has been rubbing snow on the stumps, which, in winter soldier logic, is apparently good for circulation. Historians still argue whether this belief, that patriotism could stave off cold, was widespread or just a convenient delusion shared around campfires to keep morale intact. Either way, it made for some fascinating practices, like the stand tall sleep. Soldiers would sometimes doze upright, back straight, weapons at the ready, hands stiff on their rifles, not because it was effective, because they believed lying down made the cold crawl in faster. Upright, you were strong. Prone, you were prey. And then there was the practice of heat walking. Picture this: you're ordered to walk in circles, stomping loudly, clapping your hands, and chanting the name of your regiment as if that's going to bring your body temperature back. It's not just cardio, it's spiritual insulation. And just to sprinkle some irony into the snowdrift, commanders, especially those in earlier wars, often echoed these sentiments. Official orders would scold men for feeble conduct or letting the cold into their hearts. One particularly cheerful Prussian officer once declared, "The cold is but a test of the soul. Do not let it inside." Yes, well, tell that to your frostbitten earlobe, sir. You duck into a tent, if you're lucky enough to have one. It's barely a cloth flap over frozen ground, shared with 5 other men who smell like smoked jerky and unresolved trauma. You huddle near the center, where a candle flickers bravely. like it's auditioning for a Hallmark movie. But no one lights a fire. Why? Because it's believed that lighting one will weaken the men's resolve. This is real. Some officers truly thought warmth was a crutch, that if soldiers got cozy, they'd grow soft. And if they grew soft, they'd start remembering things like comfort, home, or functioning nerve endings, which of course could lead to desertion, or worse, complaining. To distract yourselves, you swap stories. Someone swears that General so and so once walked shirtless through a blizzard, sweat steaming off his back, just to show Winter who was boss. Someone else says they saw a man melt icicles with his breath. Another insists that snuggling with snow filled boots strengthens the immune system. This, of course, is nonsense, but at least it's warm nonsense. One guy starts singing a strange little ditty about the warm heart beneath the cold sky. You hum along, because why not? You're in a canvas bag of doom, and the wind outside sounds like wolves arguing about dinner. Singing feels like something a warm person would do. The others nod in agreement, and so you begin to believe it too. That maybe the cold isn't so bad. Maybe if you just want it less, it wants you less. Maybe you're building a resistance. And that, right there, is the most bizarre belief of all. That cold is a choice. Of course, back in reality, your body is doing what it always does in sub-zero conditions, slowly shutting down non-essential parts like fingers, noses, and rational thought. But hey, at least your soul feels toasty. That counts for something, right? One man in the tent starts mumbling, says he can feel the cold leaving his body. You check on him. He's pale, rigid, and oddly peaceful. Yeah, he's not getting warmer. He's getting legend status. Tomorrow someone will say he died with honor, and probably that the cold never touched him. But for now, you're still here, still breathing mist into the dark. And despite everything, despite the numb feet, the stiff joints, the way your ears feel like they're made of glass, you feel something stirring inside. Not warmth exactly, but stubbornness. The most underrated survival tool of all. You wake up stiff and mildly confused, with a frozen flap of canvas stuck to your cheek and the distinct taste of wool and regret in your mouth. Outside, the world hasn't ended, but it's trying its best. The snow crunches with the weight of decisions you're not ready to make yet. Your knees crack when you stand. Your breath steams like a boiling kettle someone forgot to whistle. And before you can even think about coffee, which you don't have obviously, a fellow soldier slaps your shoulder and shouts, "Snow for strength," like it's a motivational poster brought to life. You look down at the powdery landscape and wonder what exactly is strengthening whom. But apparently, snow is not just an environmental nuisance. It's breakfast, medicine, and boot polish, depending on who you ask. Among winter soldiers, there was an oddly persistent belief that snow made you stronger. Not metaphorically, literally. Some believed that eating snow toughened your organs, that it made your bones learn discipline, that it trained your body to survive on less. One enthusiastic sergeant claimed that soldiers who ingested virgin flakes before dawn had better eyesight and more reliable digestion. Historians still argue whether he was being serious or just trying to justify his indigestion. There's also the curious idea that snow fed the blood. The logic? If trees drink from melted snow, and trees are strong, this is clearly unshakable science. Then so too would men grow strong by doing the same. You, being a rational 21st century adult who has occasionally read the back of a cereal box, know this is absurd. But here, in the middle of nowhere, with your stomach empty and your fingers going numb, you try it anyway. You crouch, scoop a handful of snow, and bring it to your lips. It tastes like regret, dirt, and someone else's boot print. But it's wet, and your mouth is dry, so you don't complain. Around you, men do the same. It's not a meal, it's a ritual. And rituals keep people going. You glance at Private Derry. He's sitting cross legged on a log, bare chested in the snow, arms raised like a frostbitten monk. Snow is the forge of men, he mutters, and I am the anvil. You're not sure what that means, but he hasn't moved in half an hour, and he might be stuck. Then someone starts to chant again. Snow for strength. They pass it down the line like it's part of a sacred hymn. There's a momentary warmth, not of temperature, but of camaraderie. Everyone's cold, everyone's hungry, but somehow, repeating nonsense makes it feel manageable. This belief was so common that some commanders used it to avoid giving out proper rations. Let them eat snow, one journal entry read, not in a Marie Antoinette way, but as legitimate advice. Snow has water. Water is life. Boom. Problem solved. Except for the part where too much snow, without food, lowers your body temperature and makes hypothermia tap you gently on the shoulder like a polite executioner. Still, there were rules. You couldn't just eat any snow. It had to be clean, or spiritually unbothered. One account from a Napoleonic campaign describes a man who refused to eat shadowed snow because it had too much night in it. Another insisted snow directly under pine branches was best, since pine trees were watchers and wouldn't allow cursed flakes to fall. And yes, you heard that right, cursed flakes. Apparently, if snow landed after a particularly bad omen, like a raven sighting or your shoelace snapping mid-step, it was deemed thin-blooded and not to be consumed. Whether this was genuine belief or just a dramatic way to hoard the good snow is still debated. As the day drags on, you're told it's time for training, because even in frostbite weather, discipline waits for no frostbitten soul. You line up with the others, boots crunching on snow that's half ice, half regret. The sergeant shouts instructions, but your ears are mostly frozen shut. You nod anyway. And then it starts. Snow push-ups. That's right. Dropping into the powder and doing push-ups. Face inches from nature's freezer burn. The idea? If you can do 50, you've earned your day's strength. If you can't, clearly you didn't eat enough snow. And of course there's no rest. No water break, just more marching, more yelling, more illusions of invincibility. You pass a soldier who's smearing snow under his arms. Cold shock the sweat glands, he explains earnestly, as if he has a PhD in frontier hygiene. Another has packed snow under his hat. Brain freeze keeps my thoughts sharp. He grins, eyes twitching. By now, your own thoughts are beginning to float like frozen butterflies. You start to think, maybe there is something to this whole snow equals strength theory. You did make it through training without collapsing, and that counts for something. Maybe the snow is helping, or maybe your brain is frosting over like a windshield in January. Either way, your boots are wet, your nose is leaking, and there's a growing icicle forming from your scarf that now doubles as a weapon and a fashion statement. But you keep moving. Because if winter soldiers taught us anything, it's that belief is stronger than comfort. That when there's no fireplace, no warm meal, and no clear reason to smile, you invent one. You sing nonsense songs. You chant about snow. You stare into a flurry and see strength instead of sorrow, even if it's completely, utterly, beautifully ridiculous. Your socks are wet, not just damp. They are soaked through with a blend of melted snow, foot sweat, and that indescribable soup of field misery that soldiers pretend not to notice. You sit on a crooked stump trying to wring them out when Private Thomas strolls up, cheerful as a cat in a sunbeam. Don't worry, he says, these are enchanted. You look at him, then at his socks, then back at him. He means it. In fact, in your platoon, there's a thing about socks, woolen ones specifically, not just because they're warm, but because they're believed to be magically protective, especially if knitted by someone's grandmother. You laugh, he doesn't. Turns out this belief was common. A soldier wearing a pair of hand-knit socks from his nana in the hills of Bavaria or the valleys of Vermont might as well have been wearing divine armor, not because of the quality, though bless those grandmas, they knew their way around a sheep, but because of the lore. Some believe that grandmothers, especially rural ones, imbued their knitting with protective intentions. Each stitch, a prayer, each row, a blessing. And if she spit on the toe before binding it off, extra good luck. Unless she forgot, in which case, well, that could explain your weird rash. You glance at your own socks. Plain, issued, machine made, probably cursed. Thomas is unbothered. Mine keeps spirits away, he declares. And trench rot. You raise an eyebrow. Trench rot, famously, is not a spiritual condition. It's caused by prolonged foot wetness and poor hygiene. But you don't say that, because Thomas's feet are warm. Yours are not. And in this frozen world, logic has taken a leave of absence. Historians still argue whether soldiers truly believed their garments were enchanted, or whether the idea was a convenient coping mechanism. Some letters from the Revolutionary War mention blessed cloth, or witch-staved wool, while Civil War diaries tell of hex-breaking scarves sent from home. Whether belief or metaphor, it kept morale up, and feet occasionally dry. Another fellow, Murphy, insists his mittens are blessed with thunder. You ask what that means. He replies that every time he punches the air, he hears a rumble. You wait. He punches. There is silence. He shrugs. Maybe it only works when it's cloudy. You decide to move on. There's also a common superstition. Never mix your socks. If you wore one from your mother and one from your sweetheart, you risked confusing the spirits. Apparently, domestic spirits hate love triangles. You remember someone muttering once that a mismatched sock leads to a misfired rifle. No one tested it twice. Later that morning, you're assigned sentry duty, which means standing perfectly still in a snowbank while trying not to blink in icicles. You feel the chill seeping up your legs like a tide of pure winter, and you suddenly remember a bit of trench wisdom. Wiggle your toes, or they'll die in protest. So you wiggle. You can't feel them, but you do it anyway. A man trudges past with boots slung around his neck, barefoot. Saves the socks, he says, when you gasp. Apparently, letting your socks rest extends their magic. The theory? If wool is constantly pressed to flesh, it loses its protective charm, like a spell that needs recharging. So once a day, you let them hang. Air them. Let the moonlight touch them, if possible. Preferably while you're swearing softly into the cold. Then there's the sock swapping ceremony. Once a week, at least in your battalion, a group of soldiers gathers and, very solemnly, exchange socks. It's considered bonding, and also a test of character, because if you give someone a sock with a hole in it, that's a hex. They won't say anything, but they will remember. And so will your boots. One evening, just before dusk, you find a lone sock nailed to a tree. No one knows whose it was. No one touches it. That's a war ward, someone whispers. A sign that a man died and left his protection behind. If you disturb it, you invite his fate. Better to let it be, fluttering like a tiny woolen flag in the biting wind. You nod, because somehow that makes sense now. There's a rhythm to this life, cold, aching, absurd, and in the middle of it all, these woolen talismans persist. They're stitched with memory and belief, with prayers whispered over hot tea and firelight far from this place. They carry more than warmth. They carry hope, and hope, it seems, is always foot shaped. So tonight, you pull on your socks like armor. You pat them gently. You say, "Don't fail me now." You don't expect a reply, but you do feel a tiny flicker of warmth rise from your ankles. And that's enough. You're assigned to night watch again, which feels suspiciously like punishment disguised as duty. The stars hang overhead like icy nailheads. Your breath curls and twists, catching moonlight like ghost smoke. You shift your weight from foot to foot, trying not to wake your left knee, which has recently decided it's a Civil War veteran with opinions. And that's when you remember what everyone said at dinner, or what passed for dinner, which was a warmish broth and two philosophical crackers. Don't light a fire. You don't need one. You're a soldier. Right, because in this camp, fires aren't just discouraged, they're almost taboo. There's this long standing, deeply odd belief among winter soldiers that if your discipline is pure, you can stay warm without fire. You glance around. Most tents are dark. The few that glow faintly are probably hiding contraband matches and shame. Your own hands are stiff, and your teeth are playing a symphony in C minor. You curl your fingers into your armpits and try to imagine that you're surrounded by warmth. It doesn't work, because you're not. Still, there's a strange sense of pride that comes with the fireless night, as if the cold itself is the test, and the fire would be cheating. According to old tales, especially in the Napoleonic Wars and revolutionary encampments, a fire was considered the weak man's comfort. Soldiers would boast about lasting all winter on discipline alone. One anonymous diary claimed that heat from fire fades fast, but heat from purpose is eternal. Very poetic, also extremely ineffective at preventing hypothermia. Some soldiers took it further. They believed fire tempted spirits, not helpful ones, the watching kind, the sort that danced in shadows and waited for weakness. A flame in the dark draws more than warmth. One sergeant used to mutter while chewing something that may have once been tobacco or possibly pine bark. Historians still argue whether this was a deeply rooted fear passed down from older pagan traditions or just another tool commanders used to enforce suffering under the guise of spiritual toughness. One of your tent mates, Corporal Jennings, refuses to sleep near a fire. Saw a man go mad, he tells you, eyes darting, stared too long into the flames, said they talked back. You consider asking follow-up questions, but decide against it when you see him muttering to his own canteen like it's his cousin. Then there's the warmth through willpower routine. Some soldiers claimed they could summon internal heat by focusing intensely on their breathing. You try it. Slow inhale, slow exhale. You focus on your fingers, mentally demanding warmth. Nothing. You try again. Still nothing. Someone nearby seems to be doing the same thing, only they're humming. It's a low, steady tone that sounds like a monk trapped in a jar. They're doing what's sometimes called fire sitting, a practice where a soldier sits perfectly still in the snow, eyes closed, visualizing a hearth inside his chest. You squint. He's steaming slightly. You're not sure if that's impressive or an early warning sign of thermal shock. Others take a more physical approach. They wrap themselves tightly in layers, sure, but always leave one toe or fingertip exposed to remind the body of its challenge. That's a real thing. Some believed if you were too warm, your body forgot it was supposed to fight. This belief caused some truly fascinating decisions, like the guy who took off his gloves in sub zero weather to reset his inner furnace. He reset it all right to frostbite mode. No fires also means no cooking. So meals are either cold, half frozen, or involve gnawing on hard bread that could technically be used in fencing. One soldier calls it war biscotti. You chuckle. He doesn't. He's serious. Even the act of starting a fire, striking flint, arranging tinder, was whispered to be an invitation to weakness. If you can't sleep cold, said one captain, you'll die soft. You wonder if he slept on a mattress stuffed with his own ego. But the truly strange thing? These fireless nights become a badge of honor. Soldiers tell stories like veterans of spiritual warfare. I survived the blizzard of 41 with no flame and one boot. I stayed awake through the winter vigil, wrapped only in glory. My teeth shattered, but my soul sang. You nod along because, honestly, what else can you do? At some point, you shuffle back to your tent. Your hands are red, trembling slightly, and your nose has entered a legally separate temperature zone. You lie down next to your fellow fire deniers, wrap your coat around your knees, and think warm thoughts. You picture a fireplace, a big one, stone hearth, crackling logs, someone stirring soup. You picture flannel pajamas and thick socks, and maybe a mug of cocoa that hasn't seen powdered milk or regret. You don't have any of that, of course, but the idea of it feels almost real. And somehow that helps. So you sleep, sort of, wrapped in snow-stiff canvas, half dreaming of fire, fully believing that if you just want it hard enough, you won't need it. Just don't tell your fingers that. They're already planning a rebellion. The sun rises, or tries to. Really, it just brightens the snow from nightmare to mild threat. Your breath still hangs heavy in the air, but now it sparkles a little, as if the cold has developed a sense of humor. You stretch, feeling every joint pop like old floorboards, and glance around the camp. And that's when you see it. Icicles. Long, gleaming, absolutely ridiculous icicles clinging to the beards of half the men around you. Some dangle majestically, like frozen trophies. Others spike out at odd angles, making their owners look like disgruntled porcupines. And here's the kicker. No one's trying to get rid of them. In fact, they're kind of showing them off, because here, in the frozen mindscape of winter soldier folklore, icicles in your beard are a badge of honor. A frosted face wasn't just accepted, it was revered. It meant you'd survived another night without fire, without whining, without melting into a puddle of self-pity. Your beard had frozen? Good. That meant you were a real soldier now. Soft men didn't frost. This belief was so widespread in certain regiments that soldiers began comparing their beard icicles like they were medals. Yours curls? That's cute. Mine whistles in the wind. One man reportedly braided his into tiny frozen chains and called it the Glacier Goatee. He became a local legend, or possibly just very lonely. And it didn't stop at aesthetics. Some believed the frost had spiritual properties, that a frozen beard absorbed strength from the snow, trapping winter's fury and taming it. The colder your face, the hotter your resolve. Historians still argue whether this was a genuine superstition or just the inevitable result of too many men being left alone with their thoughts and limited hygiene. Either way, beard icicles became part of the lore. You pass a soldier sitting by a stump, eyes closed, letting the frost build on his mustache. You ask if he's okay. He whispers, growing power. You nod. It seems best. There was also a belief, especially in certain Russian and Scandinavian units, that the length and density of beard frost could predict victory. The man with the longest icicles clearly fated to lead the charge or die first, depending on interpretation. One old tale, possibly apocryphal, tells of a winter skirmish where the unit refused to move until their captain's beard had collected enough frost to satisfy the mountain spirits. He stood there for 2 hours. They lost the battle, but won the frost off. In other places, beard frost was used in fortune telling. That's right, beardomancy. If the ice formed on the left side of your chin, danger was coming. If it curled upward, you'd have good luck. If it dripped into your soup, doom. If it jingled, yes, jingled, you were probably already dead and just hadn't noticed. Of course, there were practical problems with this mystical icicle collection, like the time your own beard froze to the inside of your scarf. You discovered this when you turned your head and brought the scarf, the beard, and a small chunk of dignity with you, or when Private Elkins tried to shave his beard with a hot blade and got steam burned. His frost cracked and hissed like angry spirits leaving his face. He said he felt clean. He also couldn't blink for 3 days. But even with the discomfort, men clung to the belief. You see them now, fluffing their beards before standing watch. A few have started brushing them with snow to encourage growth. One has wrapped twine through his, like holiday tinsel. Winter will see me, he says solemnly. You believe him. There's also a growing rumor that the beardless suffer more, that without facial hair, your face becomes an open gate for the cold to storm through. Shaving was seen as sacrilege, removing your only defense. Some officers even banned razors entirely during winter campaigns. Others issued beard growing challenges, which went about as well as you'd expect in a genetics lottery. Still, some tried. You remember that poor lad from Pennsylvania? Couldn't grow more than 5 hairs total. He braided them, named them, called them the Frost Five. When one fell out, he held a moment of silence. You admired his spirit and avoided eye contact. You glanced down at your own beard, a bit patchy, but respectable. The icicles have started to form at the edges. You feel a strange swell of pride. You've earned these frosty tendrils. You've survived. You are, in this odd, frostbitten world, becoming someone worth freezing. So, when night falls again, and the cold tightens like a noose of air, you don't hide your face. You lift your chin, let the wind take hold, and let the frost form. You're not just enduring the cold anymore. You're wearing it. You're marching again. Not with purpose exactly, but because standing still feels like inviting the frost to move in and start rearranging your organs. Each step sounds like your boots are chewing celery, your knees creak, your thighs burn. Your sense of time has been reduced to a series of before I lost feeling in my fingers, and after that squirrel ran past like it owed someone money. And as you drag your feet along this never-ending white, someone yells, "Keep moving. It keeps you alive," which is true, but also wildly overstated. Among winter soldiers, there was a deeply entrenched belief that the only thing standing between you and immediate snow-covered death was movement. Stop for too long, and you'd freeze, not over hours, not even minutes, just freeze, like a popsicle with anxiety. This idea gave rise to 1,000 bizarre habits. Men marched in place while eating, stomped rhythmically during conversations, even slept in what can only be described as restless, pacing cocoons, where a man would doze while shifting side to side like an indecisive metronome. You, at this moment, are attempting something called the Soldier Shuffle, a slow, heel to toe glide through snowdrifts designed to keep blood flowing without exhausting your legs. It's part march, part dance, and entirely humiliating when you slip and land on what you pray was just a snow covered pine cone. No one laughs because falling in snow is considered a bad omen. One superstition claims that the snow remembers your shape and tries to reclaim it. So naturally, you leap up fast and stomp around like you're crushing ghosts. Historians still argue whether this fear of stillness was rooted in medical observation or pure panic. Certainly, staying active helps circulation, but the sheer theatricality of some methods suggests a bit of folklore flair. You once saw a man marching in a tight circle for 6 straight hours, convinced that pausing would cause his heart to seize from the inside out. Another swore by constant teeth chattering, which he claimed was exercise for the face. He was missing 2 teeth, probably unrelated. At camp, you notice there's always someone on patrol, not because it's needed, but because no one wants to be the still one. Stillness, they say, is what gets you. That's how he went. Someone always whispers, eyes flicking toward a suspiciously human shaped mound of snow by the latrine. There are tactics for avoiding death by pausing. The elbow flex, done every 90 seconds. The knee jiggle, subtle but effective. The eyebrow lift, which probably does nothing, but helps you look skeptical while freezing to death. But the crown jewel of this philosophy is the sprint nap. Yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. You sprint until you're out of breath, collapse behind a windbreak, and try to nap while your body's still warm. You have approximately 7 minutes before the heat runs out, like trying to sleep inside a microwave that just powered down. Soldiers timed these with alarming accuracy. One guy carried a rock in his hand. If it dropped, he woke up. If he didn't wake up, well, it was a good run, literally. Then there's the guy, no one remembers his name, just that he was from someplace flat, who claimed that if you marched backwards through snow, it tricked the cold into thinking you were leaving. He said it confused the chill spirits. It mostly confused him. He walked into a tree. Still, the belief persisted. Stopping is surrender. Movement is survival. You think about this as you march through yet another white field that looks like the last one, and probably the next one too. Your toes are gone, mentally at least. Your breath feels like it weighs more than your rifle. Someone beside you mutters, "If you stop, your blood forgets how to move." You nod. Why not? Everything else seems to have forgotten how to work. You pass a soldier slapping his own cheeks. "Wake the heat," he says. "Wake the heat." You watch as he jogs in place, slapping each arm like he's mad at it. You try it. It sort of helps. Or maybe the distraction is the point, because in truth there is something powerful about movement. It makes you feel like you still have some say in the matter, that you haven't completely given in. That even when everything aches and your snot has frozen mid-nostril, you are not a snowman. Not yet. As you reach the camp perimeter, you're rewarded with the grandest prize of all. Permission to stop. Just for a moment. You sink into yourself, eyes closed, arms folded, boots firmly planted. And even in that stillness, a flicker of warmth lingers. Maybe not from your core temperature, which is frankly questionable, but from the knowledge that you can move again, that you will. That, as absurd as it sounds, the march is what's keeping you here. So you take a deep breath and shuffle on. Your lips are cracked. Not just chapped in winter, cracked, but cracked like the surface of a overbaked pie. Talking hurts. Breathing hurts. Thinking about talking while breathing hurts. So naturally, today's assignment involves standing watch with a man named Fletcher, who, according to everyone, never shuts up. You brace yourself, but surprisingly, Fletcher says nothing, just nods once and settles into place beside you, arms crossed, mouth firmly shut. You're confused. Then you remember there's a rule in this camp. One of the strangest winter soldier beliefs of all. If you speak in the cold, you lose your last warmth. That's right. Among many frostbitten units across history, it was widely believed that speaking aloud in extreme cold invited the chill into your lungs, stealing the breath's fire. As one soldier poetically phrased it, talking wasn't just discouraged, it was dangerous. And not because of the usual reasons, like giving away your position or annoying your commanding officer. No, this was metaphysical. Whispering on a winter night was thought to give the cold a voice. And if the cold had a voice, it could reason with your body, convince it to give up. You stare out into the white. Silence hangs heavy, and there's something eerie about it. How a dozen men can stand shoulder to shoulder and say nothing, as if speaking would cause the snow to shatter. This silence has rules. There are cold hours, usually between midnight and sunrise, when no one is supposed to talk. A single word could crack the frost. One superstition claims that if you laugh in those hours, your soul leaks through your teeth. You ask someone if that's metaphorical. They just blinked slowly and walked away. Historians still argue whether this was superstition, tradition, or just a social contract to avoid hearing each other's teeth chatter like maracas. But the silence became sacred. Some soldiers even developed hand signals, passed down through regiments like secret languages. One fist on the chest meant hunger. 2 fingers to the nose meant my snot froze. A full palm to the sky? That meant, yes, I see the snow, and no, I don't like it either. You try it. Fletcher nods approvingly. There's also the belief that your breath carries your warmth, and that once it leaves your mouth, it's fair game for the spirits in the snow. They can grab it, twist it, and whisper it back to you in dreams. One soldier once claimed he heard his own words echo back in his sleep, and they insulted his mother. Another version of this belief insists that if you speak too much in the cold, your tongue remembers it and stays cold long after the rest of you has warmed up. A chilling idea, literally and figuratively. You shift your stance and peer into the dark. A shape moves across the field. A fox, maybe, or just your imagination stretching its legs. You want to whisper, "Did you see that?" But you stop yourself. Fletcher glances your way, raises an eyebrow, taps his chest, then points ahead. Yes, you saw it. And suddenly you get it. In the cold, silence becomes language. Not just a way to survive, but a way to belong. You remember another tale. The Silent Watchers. These were said to be soldiers who froze while on duty, so still and quiet that they became part of the snow. But if you talk during your watch, they stir. They don't like to be reminded of what they lost. So you stay quiet, partly out of respect, partly out of very real fear. The wind picks up, curling around your ears like a judgmental ant. You bury your face deeper into your scarf. It muffles everything, your breath, your thoughts, your questions. You think of the old advice: let your silence hold the warmth. You never really understood it before, but now your silence feels full, heavy, even, like a mug of hot tea held in mittened hands. It hums with unspoken things. A cough breaks the stillness. Not yours, someone down the line. Fletcher frowns. One of the others looks over with disapproval, so intense it might have lowered the temperature. The cougher looks embarrassed. He wraps his scarf tighter. The cold forgives slowly. Some men go days barely speaking. They hum instead. Not songs exactly, more like memory notes. Others write things in the snow with their boots. Entire conversations conducted in bootprint Morse. You pass one message later that reads, "Please, stop snoring." It's been stomped out and replaced with, "I'm not. It's the wind." You smile, softly, quietly, because even your amusement might let the chill in. When the watch ends, you and Fletcher return to the tent. Neither of you speaks. You just nod, exchange a gesture that might mean good job not dying, and slip into your sleeping roll. Your breath curls in the darkness like a ribbon. You tuck it away. Let silence do the rest. Morning arrives in the most irritating way possible, not with birdsong or sunshine, but with a sharp gust of wind that yanks open your tent flap and slaps your face with a gust of snow dust and shame. You sit up, grumbling internally, and realize that your canteen is frozen solid. Again, because apparently, courage doesn't insulate water. You wrap your cloak tighter and pull on your boots, which now have the texture of frozen brisket. Outside, camp is already half awake and entirely grumpy. You step out into the frost, inhale deeply, and immediately regret it. The air is so cold, it feels like it might file a noise complaint against your lungs. And yet, despite all this, there's a phrase passed around by the optimists in your unit, the true believers, the frost philosophers. Courage is insulation. Not courage leads to warmth. Not courage helps you endure the cold. No, courage itself, they say, is a physical buffer against the elements. It's as if somewhere along the line, the soul was promoted to HVAC technician. You spot Sergeant Byrne, who was famously unbothered by the cold, walking across camp with his coat unbuttoned, sleeves rolled, and a face like someone who's just chewed gravel for fun. "Cold only bites cowards," he bellows. Someone sneezes softly behind a tent. Byrne spins. "Don't let it in, Jenkins. Don't invite it." You tighten your collar, because as absurd as it sounds, this belief is contagious. You start to think, maybe if you just toughen your brain, your body will follow. Maybe if you face the cold with enough internal fire, it simply won't stick. This idea is bolstered by men like Private Lester, who meditates in the snow every morning wearing nothing but a tunic and pure spite. He sits there, legs crossed, arms loose, whispering to himself. You edge closer once and catch a bit of it. "I am the furnace. The frost is nothing. The frost is decorative." Historians still argue whether these practices stem from older warrior traditions, like Norse berserkers who believed emotional fury could heat the body, or if they were desperate psychological tricks that accidentally worked. Some modern scholars call it proto-biofeedback. Others call it a bold misunderstanding of biology. You call it Thursday. The rituals vary. Some soldiers slap themselves awake, not lightly, like full-face percussion. Others carry hot coals in metal tins tied to their belts, not to warm their bodies, but as symbolic fuel for their Faber inner forge. The theory? The body would see the coal and remember. One man, known simply as Steady Bill, claimed he hadn't felt cold in 6 years. He said this while wearing 3 scarves and 2 hats, but still he insisted it was all mental. Once, when frost formed in his beard, he stared into the mirror and growled until it melted. It didn't, but he looked deeply committed. Even the camp sayings reflect the mindset. You hear them muttered like mantras. Fear invites the chill. The warmest place is your resolve. Weakness trembles, courage burns. You try repeating them under your breath. It doesn't exactly thaw your toes, but it gives you something to focus on, besides the fact that your breath just froze on your eyelashes. Then there's the bravery jacket ritual. New recruits, once they'd survived their first deep freeze night, were sometimes given a scratchy wool cloak, ugly as sin and stiffer than a regret sandwich. But it wasn't just a jacket, it was a symbol. Soldiers swore it felt warmer than regulation coats, even though it weighed half as much and smelled like a goat's bad decisions. And of course, if you ever admitted to being cold, even in passing, you were marked. Not officially, but guys would look at you sideways. Someone would mutter, "Don't say it out loud, it listens." You'd find your rations colder, your bedroll suspiciously damp. The cold punishes confession, so you stay quiet. You stand tall. You let the chill bite, and you grin like it tastes like pie. And sometimes it works. Sometimes, in those moments when the wind howls and the sky glares and the snow stings like a sarcastic bee, you feel a flicker of real warmth. From somewhere deeper than your coat, your skin, your socks, which may or may not be cursed. We've covered that. You feel it in your spine. A spark of "I'm still here." And that spark, it spreads. It's not magic. It's not science. It's not even bravery. Not really. It's just you, still upright, still trudging, still refusing to let the cold write your story. Because yes, you're freezing. But no, you're not beaten. Not today. You're crouched by the mess tent, or rather the mess flap, cradling a tin cup filled with something warmish and beige. It's technically soup, but the real ingredient is snow. Again, because that's what's available, and because someone, somewhere up the frostbitten chain of command, believes snow isn't just useful, it's sacred. You watch as a private, eyes wide with reverence, scoops fresh powder into a pot. He mutters something under his breath. Before lighting the fire, you lean closer. "Did you just pray to the snow?" He nods solemnly. "Don't want to make it mad?" Of course, because in the frosty folklore of winter soldiers, snow isn't just weather, it's alive. It has moods. And if you boil it wrong, it punishes you. This superstition goes back centuries. Some units believed that snow gathered from the ground was already spent, like trying to drink tea leaves someone else used. Others insisted it had to be taken mid-fall, caught with a clean tin, or your broth would taste like betrayal. There are rituals. You must stir snow clockwise. Boil slowly. Never, under any circumstances, let it hiss. That sound, that's the anger of the forest spirits escaping. One story, possibly exaggerated, but passed around like scripture, tells of a soldier who dumped snow into boiling water all at once. The pot cracked. The fire went out. His beard caught frost inside the tent. The message was clear: don't rush the snow. Historians still debate whether this belief emerged from practical cooking issues. Boiling snow too fast does, after all, waste fuel, or from something older. Some say it was inherited from pagan traditions, where snowmelt was considered a gift from the sky and not to be disrespected. Others believe it was just a way to pass the time when your toes were numb and the soup was still 40 minutes away from lukewarm. You take a sip of your snow stew. It tastes like wet regret and pepper flakes. Across the fire, someone sprinkles crushed pine needles into their bowl and whispers a blessing. Adds flavor and forgiveness, he says. You try not to gag, and it's not just food. Snow used for drinking must also be emotionally neutral. That's the actual term a soldier uses. If the snow feels tense, you move along. Don't ask how you're supposed to sense tension in frozen water. You'll just know. Then there's the lore of snow types. Fluff snow is for warmth, insulating your boots. Crunch snow is for walking, navigational clarity. Whisper snow, the kind that falls without sound, is for drinking and praying. And angry snow, that's snow that blows sideways and dares you to blink. Do not eat angry snow. Ever. One man swore he ate angry snow once and got a week of dreams where a rabbit judged me. We didn't ask follow up questions. The methods of melting it are just as bizarre. Some insist you should let snow melt in your hands first to make peace. Others say you must hum to it, a lullaby if possible. You witnessed one man cradling a snowball and softly singing Amazing Grace before dropping it gently into his kettle. The soup still tasted terrible, but he looked spiritually fulfilled. You learn quickly not to joke about it. Once you made the mistake of calling snow just frozen rain in front of Corporal Ayres. He went quiet for a full 10 seconds, then deadpan. That's like calling fire just angry wood. Point taken. There's even a superstition that boiling snow too often angers the winter gods, resulting in blizzards. One regiment reportedly banned snow boiling entirely after a week of bad weather. They switched to licking icicles, which, by the way, is also ritualized. You must break the icicle with your left hand, look away as you taste it, and never bite the tip. That's disrespectful. Biting the tip means you challenge the cold, and unless you want to be smothered by snow in your sleep, don't challenge the cold. You stare into your cup and realize something extraordinary. Snow has gone from nuisance to religion, and in a strange, shivering way, it makes sense. When your world is reduced to boots, breath, and bitter air, assigning meaning to frozen water gives you agency, gives you a way to feel like you're participating in your own survival, not just suffering through it. So the next time you collect snow, you pause. You choose gently falling flakes. You hum a few bars of something sleepy. You pour them into your pot like you're handling ancient treasure. You stir slowly, clockwise, and when you take that first sip of snow broth, you swear, just for a moment, it tastes a little better. Still bad, but better. Your nose is leaking again. Not dramatically, just enough to remind you that your face has decided to go rogue and produce fluids at inopportune times. You try wiping it with your sleeve, but the sleeve is frozen stiff and now smells like a combination of soup, desperation, and maybe regret, which is fitting because today you're headed to the latrine zone. And let's just say, if you thought the rest of camp was bad, the bathroom situation is a snow-covered psychological test. And worse, there's a belief among your fellow winter soldiers that holding it builds character. No, seriously. They say the longer you wait, the stronger you become. That endurance of the bladder is a mark of inner discipline. Some even claim that urine contains heat, and releasing it is like pouring your body's last bit of fire into the snow. Which sounds noble until you remember this noble fire is, in fact, pee. You shuffle toward the designated latrine zone, a term that is generous to a patch of forest with a privacy sheet and a vague sense of doom. Beside you, Corporal Jansen is visibly squirming but determined. Mind over matter, he mutters. Gotta keep the warmth inside. You ask how long he's been holding it. 3 days, he whispers. I've started seeing colors. You back away slowly. This odd belief that relieving yourself robs you of vital body heat wasn't just isolated. It appears across journals and camp lore from centuries of winter warfare. Historians still argue whether it was rooted in poor understanding of bodily processes or just a particularly unpleasant form of toxic stoicism. One diary from the Crimean War described a man who claimed his urine froze midstream and interpreted it as a sign from the frost gods to stay pure. Another wrote that a man who broke the hold fast vow caught a chill and died, not from cold, but from weakness of will. That's a bold take, and probably not medically reviewed. You finally reach the latrine zone and are met with what looks like a haunted snowbank. The seats are wood planks suspended over pits, guarded by thin walls that don't so much protect your privacy as whisper, "We gave it our best." There are icicles hanging inside the stall. One soldier has carved protective runes into the beam above the seat. Another has scrawled, "Hold strong," into the snow with a stick. You begin to realize that peeing has become a spiritual act. There's even a belief that certain trees are safer than others. Spruce is honorable, birch is bad luck, and heaven forbid you aim toward a pine that's seen battle. It's a veteran and must be respected. You follow protocol. You nod toward the latrine before entering. You do not whistle. Whistling startles the warmth. Everyone knows this. You also learn that some soldiers perform pre-relief rituals. One man crosses his arms 3 times, another taps his boots in an odd rhythm before sitting. You try to ask about it, but he just says, "It's between me and the snow." Another curiosity, steam fortune telling. That's right. Some soldiers believe that the steam rising from fresh output can predict the weather. If it swirls, a storm. If it rises straight up, calm winds. If it doesn't rise at all, you might already be dead, and this is your ghost's problem now. And heaven help you if someone sees you walk back from the latrines too quickly. That means you didn't resist, that you let the cold win. Men with shorter trips are silently judged. One soldier deliberately looped around camp 3 times to make it look like he fought longer. You wash your hands with snow. Because of course you do. As you trudge back to your tent, you overhear 2 men arguing about pea purity. Apparently, someone used yellow snow to melt ice in a pot. It didn't go well. Accusations were made. A duel was nearly declared. And through all of this, there remains a haunting echo of belief that bodily functions are a window into a soldier's soul. Control them, and you control yourself. Lose control, you risk unraveling. It's nonsense, of course, but in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by frozen dirt and sniffly comrades, nonsense often wears a crown. So tonight, before bed, you think about going. But then you remember what Jansen said. Every second you hold it is another second the cold doesn't win. You sigh. You cross your legs and decide to be heroic. For now, it's after dark now. Again, you don't know what day it is anymore because time, in the winter camp, is measured in layers. You started with 2 shirts, then added a scarf, then an extra scarf. Now you're pretty sure you're wearing your blanket. You look like a pile of laundry that achieved sentience and mild resentment. But you're not alone. Tonight's activity, if you can call it that, is the rite of the sock rock. It begins, as all great winter soldier rituals do, with a rumor. Put a hot rock in your socks. whispers Private Nolan reverently, and your feet will stay warm all night, but only if you choose the right rock. You blink slowly, because apparently not all rocks are equal. According to camp tradition, each soldier must find their own warmth stone, a rock that speaks to their inner temperature. Some soldiers swear by round ones, others by flat ones. A few insist the rock must be held to your heart before placing it in the fire, so it learns your rhythm. Historians still argue whether this was just a practical method to avoid frostbite or some sort of stone based bonding exercise. Either way, no one wants to share their sock rock. You ask Nolan if you can borrow his. He recoils like you suggested borrowing his spleen. I trained mine, he says. Of course he did. You wander the edge of camp with your lantern, scanning the snow. Every few feet, someone else is doing the same, stooped, muttering, holding stones up to the moonlight like druids in surplus wool. One man tests for vibrations, another sniffs his. You eventually pick one that feels solid. It's gray, rough. You name it Harold. Back at camp, you place Harold near the fire, gently, respectfully, as is tradition. When it's warm, not hot, just toasty, you wrap it in a scarf and stuff it in the bottom of your bedroll. Not directly in your sock, mind you. That's for rookies. It should radiate warmth, not burn your toes off. There are rules. If the rock gets too cold overnight, it's said to have rejected your aura. If it stays warm, you've bonded. Some men carry the same rock from campaign to campaign, like a very unenthusiastic pet. You lie down. Harold hums a faint heat through your feet, and for a few minutes you believe. You remember another tale, the Stone of Valor, a rock passed through generations of one family, said to have never gone cold. It was rumored to contain the bravery of the first man who slept with it. A sergeant once carried it in his coat during battle. He survived, lost 3 toes, but survived. There's also the rock swap ceremony, performed at the end of winter. Soldiers gather in a circle and, yes, exchange rocks. It's weirdly emotional. Some cry. Some carve initials into the stones. One man tried to keep both rocks. He was exiled to latrine duty for a week. And don't forget the fire blessing. Before placing your rock into the flames, you must whisper a personal truth to it. Doesn't matter what, just something real. It's believed that the rock absorbs your honesty and turns it into heat. You try this. Quietly. Something about your childhood, dog, and a broken kite. The rock doesn't respond, but it does stay warm longer than expected. So maybe, then there's the cursed stones. Every camp has one. A rock that never warms. Soldiers say it feeds on warmth. One man claimed it made his boots colder, just by proximity. You learn that these rocks must be buried, upside down, with a pine needle cross. No one knows why. No one questions it. Later that night, you wake up and check on Harold. Still warm. Your feet feel almost human. You whisper a quick thank you. Then you pause. Did you just thank a rock? You shrug. It's winter. Sanity has gone to hibernate. But in the quiet, snow-filled night, with wind scratching against canvas and men sighing in their sleep, you feel something small and wonderful. Not warmth, not comfort, but a little control. A little bit of heat that you earned, that you made. That's yours. And for a soldier surrounded by cold, superstition, and soup made from regret, that's no small thing. So you curl up, smile, and dream of rocks, warm ones. Dawn scratches at the tent canvas like a lazy raccoon. You open one eye, immediately regret it, and close it again. But it's too late. Your feet have already informed your brain that they're cold. Your brain replies with a grunt. Your toes, in protest, attempt to detach. You stretch stiffly and reach down for Harold, your trusty sock rock. Still warm. A small victory. But then your tent mate, Dawson, leans in and whispers, "Don't forget to face check your frost." You freeze. Not because of the cold this time, but because you realize you forgot to interpret your beard frost. Yes, really. In the frozen traditions of winter soldiers, how the frost forms on your beard isn't just decoration, it's a sign, a personal oracle of doom, glory, or indigestion, and neglecting to read it is like waking up and ignoring a handwritten note from the universe, scribbled in breath ice. You scramble for your tiny cracked mirror. It's foggy, like always, but the frost clinging to your beard is unmistakable. It's thick on the right side, curling near the chin, and faint on the upper lip. Dawson leans over. Looks like you'll face wind from the west, possibly minor betrayal. Maybe oatmeal for lunch. You stare. He's serious. Because among the more bizarre beliefs, in winter soldier camps, frost patterns are prophecy. And men take it very seriously. One soldier in your unit has started a full-blown beard frost journal where he tracks daily formations and outcomes. Yesterday, he reported double-curled icicles with light misting. Later that afternoon, he found a coin in his soup. Coincidence? Not in this climate. Another man claims that when the frost formed a perfect triangle on his chin, he met his future wife during leave. Others report that upward frost curls mean strength. Downward frost means caution. No frost? You're already dead inside. Historians still argue whether this originated from shamanic traditions or just a very bored outpost trying to assign meaning to facial hair. Some suggest it was an attempt to give soldiers a feeling of predictive control in otherwise chaotic weather. Others say it was a desperate excuse to stop shaving. Either way, your camp has developed a whole system. Frost, crown on the upper lip. Expect a commanding officer's wrath. Beard edge frost with middle gap. Two truths and a lie. Day. Watch who you trust. Symmetrical frosting. Battle ahead, but your feet will stay warm. Icicles on just one side. You're half blessed, which is apparently not as good as it sounds. There's even a designated interpreter. Corporal Fields. He's not an officer, but people come to him like he's the beard whisperer. He squints at your chin, strokes his own icicle, laced whiskers, and murmurs phrases like left heavy frost spiral, likely emotional turbulence, maybe a letter from home, or potatoes. You nod gravely. The ritual goes deeper. Some soldiers groom their beards, specifically to enhance frost messages. You overheard a man trimming the center line so the frost can flow freely. Another braided his mustache ends into spirals, hoping for clearer signs. Of course, there are fraudulent frost readers too, guys who just say what you want to hear. Ah yes, frost on both cheeks. That means you'll be promoted and survive the war. Also, you're handsome. These are considered bad luck. Flattery offends the snow. Some frost-based warnings have become camp-wide legend. There's the infamous crisscross curl that once predicted a skirmish before scouts confirmed enemy movement, and the blank beard morning when no one had any frost and everyone instinctively knew to stay quiet. That day, a blizzard hit. No one was surprised, just very cold and a little smug. You also learn about the beard of silence, a phenomenon where a soldier's beard collects frost so thickly that he can't open his mouth without shattering icicles. It's seen as a sacred moment. No one speaks to him. They just nod and let him absorb the silence. This morning, you wipe some frost away and immediately regret it. You just erased your message, someone hisses. You consider drawing it back in with your finger. Someone else whispers, too late, the snow saw. Later, during drills, you see two men comparing frost shapes like Rorschach tests. Yours looks like a horse, one says. No, it's a walrus. Is that good? Depends which side it's on. And all of this daily reading of beard prophecies, becomes strangely comforting. Because when nothing makes sense, when frostbite feels inevitable, and your bones make crunching noises they didn't make last week, at least your beard gives you a sign. You lie in your tent that night, wrapped tight, Harold tucked close, and wonder what tomorrow's frost will say. Maybe hold fast, maybe stay low, maybe brush me before the potatoes. Whatever it says, you'll listen, because out here, even your beard has something to believe in. The snow has stopped, which is suspicious. When you've been a winter soldier long enough, you stop celebrating clear skies. You start eyeing them like a dog who knows someone left the door open. Something's coming, and if it's not falling yet, it's probably building up strength. But the quiet today is unnerving in a different way. The air feels still, like it's listening, and that's when someone whispers the dreaded words, white silence. The entire camp tenses. White silence isn't just snow with manners. It's a term passed down through regiments for centuries, used to describe a very specific kind of winter hush. Not peaceful, not calming, ominous. The kind of silence where you swear the snow is watching you back. You pause by the tent entrance. Even your footsteps sound muffled, like the ground is trying to smother your presence. The wind is gone. The trees aren't moving. No birds, no creaks, no distant sneezes from Jenkins' tent. Just silence. And in camp lore, white silence always means something is coming. Some believe it's weather, that a blizzard gathers breath during this calm. Others say it's spiritual, that winter's soul walks the land during these moments, inspecting the living, noting who looks weak. One soldier says, you don't feel the cold during white silence. You feel seen. Historians still argue whether this belief was just a dramatization of barometric pressure shifts or a psychological symptom of isolation. But to the men living it, it felt real. Real enough to change behavior. During white silence, you don't talk. You don't whistle. You don't even eat loud food. Crunching hard bread is seen as provocative. One guy got tackled once for biting into an apple. You startled the snow, someone shrieked. Even fire is kept low. Flames are said to flicker wrong during white silence. Candles sputter. Logs crack unpredictably. One tale tells of a flame that turned blue and hissed the word, leave. No one could prove it, but the man who heard it walked away and didn't return until spring. You watch the camp adjust, men moving slower, softer. Tents zip quietly. Boots land with more care. A private walks by on tiptoe, nodding respectfully at a particularly pristine snowbank. There are protective rituals, of course. Some soldiers press their foreheads to the snow. It's called listening back. Others place their hands on frost-covered rocks, believing the stone will absorb their fear. One man sprinkles salt in a perfect circle around his bedroll, then whispers, "Stay out." He won't say who he's talking to. There's even a tradition called the cold bow. You step outside your tent at dusk, look toward the horizon, and bow slightly. Not for anyone in particular, just in case someone or something is listening. Tonight, you try it. You step out. The air feels thick and empty. You bow your head. Nothing happens, of course. And yet, you feel oddly respected. Later, someone tells you that the white silence also marks the thin time, when the barrier between the natural and unnatural thins like stretched parchment. That's when snowmen shouldn't be built, because they might not stay statues, and that's definitely not the night to tell stories around the fire, because stories become real during white silence. You lie in your bedroll that night, blanket over your ears, Harold the rock warming your feet, and you try to ignore how still everything feels. It's not quiet like a peaceful forest. It's quiet like a courtroom waiting for the verdict. Your breath fogs and curls above you. You hold still. Even your thoughts start whispering. And then, outside, a twig snaps. Your heart does too. You sit bolt upright, eyes wide, frozen in place. Nothing else happens. No movement. No sound. Just the snap. You lie back down slowly. The camp remains hushed. Someone in a nearby tent coughs once, then stops. The snow accepts it. Eventually, sleep comes, not because you're comfortable, but because being awake feels too loud. The last thing you remember before dreams take over is a line from one of the older soldiers. White silence doesn't mean nothing's there, it means everything's waiting. You curl tighter, and hope, whatever's waiting, decides to keep waiting. The sun creeps above the trees like it's trying not to wake anyone. You sit up groggily, blinking frost from your lashes, and pull your boots on, carefully, respectfully, because it's Pine Amulet Inspection Day. That's not an official term. No one ever announced it. But somehow, word travels fast when it comes to superstitions you can wear. Today, everyone's checking their pine bundles. Those little sprigs tied to jackets, belts, or tucked inside boots. Because according to winter soldier belief, pine needles aren't just decorative, they're protective. And not just from wolves or boredom. They're supposed to warm you, emotionally, physically, even spiritually. The story goes that pine trees, being evergreen, never sleep through the cold, and thus have a kind of stubborn resilience. Wearing pine is like borrowing that grit, that memory of warmth in the middle of snow. You reach into your coat pocket and pull out your own little pine bundle. It's dried now, a bit crispy, but still smells like the forest and menthol and oddly, hope. Private Anders sees you holding it and nods solemnly. Mine's from the southern side of the hill, he says. South facing trees hold more sun. You blink. That actually makes some sense, in a weird herbal logic kind of way. Anders goes on. Gotta tie it with twine, not string. String offends the spirits. You don't ask which spirits. You just nod. It's too early to argue with twig theology. Historians still argue whether this practice was inherited from folk medicine, battlefield tradition, or just a desperate attempt to make tree debris feel meaningful. But across regions and centuries, pine bundles keep showing up. Some soldiers sleep with them under their pillows. Others burn a few needles in the morning fire, claiming it wakes the courage. One even tried to steep them in hot water to make pine tea of valor. It tasted like regret and cough syrup. He swore it helped anyway. You pass Sergeant Markham, tying a new bundle to his backpack strap. His fingers move with ritualistic precision. 3 knots, then a tuck. He doesn't speak. He just hums something soft and slow. It might be a hymn or a warning. Then there are the variations. Some men prefer red pine, said to bring strength. Others insist on white pine for purity of purpose. One guy collects black pine, which he calls stealth wood. He won't explain further, just narrows his eyes and vanishes into the tree line. You've also heard rumors of pine duels, not battles, debates, heated, whispered arguments over which tree gifted which needles, and whether they were mature enough to provide proper luck. One ended with a man throwing his bundle into the fire and shouting, "Fine, let the snow take me." The snow didn't, but he did get sick. So now he wears two bundles. You walk through camp, and the smell of pine is everywhere. It's oddly calming, like nature is holding your hand. The needles poke out from coat seams, helmet bands, even rifle straps. Someone's carved a pine amulet into a tiny face and named it Gregory. Gregory is now part of the squad. There's also a belief that losing your pine bundle is a very bad sign. The forest has turned its back on you, they say. One man woke to find his missing. He immediately apologized to a tree and made a new one, this time using a twig from a particularly smug looking pine outside the latrine. It worked! His toes thawed. Then there's the strange idea that pine bundles must be fed stories. You're supposed to tell them things, confessions, victories, private fears, so they can absorb your truth. One soldier swears his pine sprig changed color after he admitted to stealing a biscuit. No one else saw it, but he looked lighter. That night, in your tent, you hold your own pine bundle and whisper into it. Just a little story, a memory, something soft. You don't expect anything, but afterward, your bedroll feels warmer. Or maybe that's just you. You sleep with it tucked beside your scarf, and in the dream that comes, the trees are watching, but gently, like they remember you. You wake to wind, not just any wind, the whispering kind, the kind that seems to say things you almost understand in a language that might just be your own breath looping back. You sit up, heart thumping quietly, and look around the tent. All seems calm, but outside, there's movement, not visible exactly, but something shifts in the air, and that's when someone mutters, "They're here." You already know who they mean, the ghosts of last winter, because among winter soldiers, there's a deeply embedded belief that the spirits of those who froze last year don't leave. They stay, not malevolent, not exactly, just present, just cold, watching. They whisper through snow flurries. They appear in the corners of frozen tent fabric. They show up as strange warmth on your cheek or a glove that mysteriously returns after being lost. They're the unseen platoon, and you'd be wise to nod politely when passing an unusually still snowdrift. There's a saying, no winter soldier dies alone. He becomes the winter. Historians still debate whether this belief served as comfort or caution, perhaps both. For many soldiers, the idea that the fallen stick around wasn't horrifying. It was reassuring. It meant someone still had your back, even if they were, well, translucent. In camp, there are rules about them. You don't build fires too close to where someone died. You don't sit on snow mounds shaped suspiciously like a crouched figure. And above all, you never ever say, "At least it's not as bad as last year." That's called tempting the silence. There are rituals, of course. Some soldiers hang small twigs, tied with red thread from their tent poles, offerings to the ghosts. Others leave one corner of their blanket untucked at night. Room for a guest, they say. You pass by the memorial area that morning, just a cluster of wooden stakes in the snow, each with a name and sometimes a personal item, a cracked mug, a frost-stiffened sock, a pine sprig. It's quiet there, not just out of respect, but because voices don't rise well in that patch of camp. Like the air prefers whispers. One soldier claims he hears singing sometimes, faint, almost sweet. Others say the ghosts warn you before the cold gets bad. A flutter in your tent, a sudden feeling of being watched, a knot in your boot string that wasn't there before. You scoff. Then notice your boots are tied differently than how you left them. You walk slower the rest of the day. Later, you hear Jenkins talking in his sleep, except it's not his usual snore mumble about stew and betrayal. He's repeating coordinates, specific ones. The next day, a patrol goes to that spot and finds the abandoned sled of a supply drop no one knew existed. Jenkins swears he has no memory, but his frost pattern that morning, perfect spiral on the left cheek. A sign of borrowed memory, someone says. Then there's the matter of footsteps. When snow is fresh and undisturbed, it's easy to spot tracks. You wake one morning and see them circling your tent, not from boots, but bare feet. No one laughs. Everyone just nods and pours stronger pine tea. Of course, there are skeptics. One man from the southern regiments insisted it was nonsense, just snow shifting, minds playing tricks. That night, he dreamed of his own grave and woke up with his pillow soaked, not in sweat, but with a melted outline of a hand. He didn't argue after that. You begin to notice small things, cold patches where there shouldn't be, breath that fogs sideways, a voice just at the edge of sleep saying your name, gently, not threatening, just there. And even though logic says otherwise, you start talking back. Just a quiet word before you drift off. Thanks, maybe, or keep watch, or just a silent nod toward the dark corner of the tent. It helps. Strangely, because believing in the ghosts of last winter means you never truly freeze alone. They've walked this cold before you. They remember. And tonight, when the wind whispers at your tent and the frost curls like script across the flap, you curl tighter in your roll and close your eyes. And for the first time in a while, the cold doesn't feel empty. It feels shared. The snow won't stop talking. It doesn't fall. It accumulates with judgment, coating your boots, your gloves, your eyebrows, and possibly your self-worth. And through it all, one unspoken rule keeps coming up. One superstition so deeply ingrained that even the most hardened soldier tiptoes around it. Never say the word cold. Not brr, not chilly. Certainly not cold. The word itself is treated like a curse. Like uttering it will invite the cold deeper into your bones. And honestly, you believe it, because the last guy who said it, he's been sneezing ever since. This belief goes beyond camp-wide tradition. It's practically doctrine. Soldiers will do linguistic gymnastics just to avoid saying it. You've heard men say, "The air feels assertive. There's a crispness today. My face has retired from feeling." You once overheard someone describe the weather as emotionally distant. Everyone nodded. Why all the fear? According to lore, the cold listens. And if it hears its own name, it becomes aware of you. And if it becomes aware of you, it settles in. Historians still debate whether this was born from magical thinking or sheer survival logic. But across every war fought in frozen places, this unspoken rule shows up. Don't name the beast. You find yourself adjusting your vocabulary. Instead of, "I'm cold," you say, "My fingers are having trust issues." Instead of, "This tent is freezing," it's, "This canvas encourages spiritual growth." Instead of cold soup, it's just soup. Some soldiers go even further, inventing entirely new languages. One group developed a code where cold was replaced with Clarence. So you'd hear things like, "Watch out, Clarence is creeping into the sleeping bags." It somehow made it worse. Then there are the workarounds. Tapping your nose once to mean it's cold out. Holding up 3 fingers for 3 layers needed, rubbing your hands together and dramatically exhaling, which somehow communicates both your discomfort and a deep yearning for soup. And of course, there's the camp punishment. If someone says cold out loud, they're immediately handed latrine duty or asked to do heat patrol, which involves staring at the fire and whispering compliments to keep it alive. You ask if that's a joke. They don't laugh. You try it one night. The fire crackles politely. You whisper, "You're looking especially flamey today." The flames shift slightly. You choose to interpret that as gratitude. The superstition runs so deep that even letters home are edited. Soldiers will write, "The weather continues its vendetta," or "The mornings are aggressively motivational." One note read, "My boots have filed a formal complaint." And let's not forget the supernatural logic behind it. Some believe that the word cold attracts ice spirits, ancient beings that live in snowbanks and icicles. They're not evil, exactly, just needy. You say their name, they cling to you, like frostbitten puppies, that gnaw your toes off. There's a legend, probably exaggerated, of a man who dared to say cold 3 times in a row. That night, the frost moved into his tent and never left. His rations froze. His socks crunched. His shadow was shivering. Eventually, he left camp wrapped in every blanket he could find, muttering, "Never again," into a scarf. You don't test the theory. There's even a bedtime chant. No names for the night air, no words for the bite, just silence and layers, till morning brings light. You catch yourself whispering it sometimes without realizing. So now, whenever someone new arrives at camp, there's a gentle hazing. Say the word. Someone dares. Say what it is. Most don't, but when one brave soul does, the entire camp falls silent. Someone throws him a second scarf. He wears it, he learns. And eventually, he starts describing things like weather that encourages reflection, or air with opinions, just like the rest of you. Because in this place, naming the cold gives it power, and you, soldier, have enough to carry. So instead, you let the silence speak. You bundle tighter. You rub your fingers together and sigh. And if someone asks how you're doing, you smile and say, "Feeling pretty brisk." The boots are gone, not stolen, not misplaced, not chewed by foxes or buried in an avalanche. Just gone. You wake up, reach for them as usual, and find nothing but a patch of icy canvas and the echo of your own confusion. You blink. Rub your eyes, peer under the blanket. Still nothing. Harold, the sock rock, is exactly where you left him. Your pine bundle rests gently against your scarf. But your boots? Vanished. And all you hear from outside the tent is a single ominous phrase. The snow took them. You shuffle out in socked feet, 3 pairs layered, because you're not entirely foolish, and meet a small crowd. They're all staring at the same spot in the snow where your boots should be. No tracks, no drag marks, just undisturbed snow, with 2 faint boot-shaped shadows, like the memory of footwear. Someone mutters, "Classic theft by offering." You glance around, waiting for the punchline. It doesn't come, because apparently, among winter soldiers, there's a long-standing belief that if you leave your boots too close to the tent flap, the snow may take them as a trade, a kind of tax, a quiet deal with the elements. You hear the theories. It needed something warm. It liked the shape. You offended the frost yesterday, didn't you? You don't remember offending the frost, but honestly, it's hard to track your diplomatic status with precipitation. According to lore, the snow doesn't take bad boots, only good ones, well worn, loyal, personally bonded, which makes this sting even more. These boots were yours. They had names, probably. Historians still argue whether this belief stems from natural disasters, wind gusts, animal mischief, or simply from sleep deprived soldiers inventing weather deities with shoe fetishes. But the belief persisted, so much so that many camps developed anti theft rituals, stuffing a pine sprig inside each boot overnight, sleeping with one foot still in the left boot to anchor its soul, whispering to the boots before bed, "Stay, I still need you." Some men took it further, boot leashes tied to their sleeping rolls like tethered livestock. One soldier swore that, even with a leash, the boots disappeared, leaving the rope tied around a particularly smug snowball. You're handed a spare pair from the camp's boot orphanage. They're stiff, too big, and smell like someone else's secrets. You trudge in them anyway, humbled. Throughout the day, men stop you and ask what you did wrong. Did you curse the weather? Speak the forbidden word? Mock the wind? One Yahat man gasps, "Did you forget to rotate the sock rock before sleep?" That resets the protection. You didn't even know that was a thing. Now you do. To appease the snow, soldiers begin offering small items around the camp perimeter: bent spoons, buttons, half burned twigs, a poem written on birch bark and tucked under a rock. You decide to leave a biscuit crumb and a thank you note. It disappears overnight. The next morning, your old boots are back, damp but whole, sitting neatly side by side just outside your tent, pine needles tucked under the laces. No one saw anything. You feel both relieved and vaguely judged. There's a new respect for your boots now. You speak to them softly. You tuck them in with care. You even consider naming them Harold and Maud, Lefty and Not So Lefty, because in this winter world, where frost forms hieroglyphs and snow judges your choices, your gear is alive. Not in the horror movie sense, but in the sacred, half silly, deeply human way we give meaning to the things that keep us alive. You pat them gently that night before sleep. You did good. And somewhere, out in the white silence, the snow smiles. Probably. Tonight, there's a ceremony. Not official, not on any schedule, but unmistakably sacred in the way all whispered traditions are. It's called the Circle of Steam. You find it by following the scent, something earthy, herbal, and faintly like boiled socks, and the sound, soft humming, low and strange, like monks who've lost the lyrics. You arrive at the center of camp, where a fire has been built, lower than usual, glowing orange under a cluster of pine trees. Around it, soldiers sit cross-legged, each with a tin mug cupped between their hands, steam curling into the air like ghostly fingers. No one speaks, not out loud anyway, because this isn't a gathering for chatting. It's a purification rite, meant to keep the frost from crawling inside, not just into your boots or gloves, but into your thoughts. Everyone in the circle sips from their mug in silence. The drink? Steam tea, a vague concoction of pine needle broth, crushed bark, and something someone claimed was good intentions steeped in melted snow. You take a hesitant sip. It tastes like the memory of soup and smoke, and oddly, safety. According to Winter Soldier lore, steam is the only thing the cold cannot claim. You can't freeze it, you can't hold it, and you definitely can't reason with it. Steam, they say, is the soldier's soul leaving the body to scout ahead and then returning with stories. Hence the ceremony. Sip, watch, breathe, reflect. Let the steam do the speaking. One man swears that if you stare into it long enough, you'll see images, future battles, past friends, maybe just your own face. reminding you you're still here. Historians still argue whether the circle of steam originated from medicinal practices or if it's purely symbolic. Some link it to ancient sweat lodge rituals. Others call it proto group therapy for people too cold to admit they had feelings. You don't care. You're in it now. There are rules. You don't speak unless the steam speaks first. You never mock the mug. Each has a name, even if unspoken, and you must share one thought with the steam before it fades. You watch as Private Dorsey leans into his cup and whispers, "I'm afraid I'll forget what green looks like," then sips. Next, Sergeant Ashby mutters, "I still feel her hand when I put on my gloves," then sips. You blink into your own cup, and for a moment, the steam dances just so. It almost looks like home, a doorframe, a flickering lamp, a pile of blankets, and the promise of soup that doesn't whisper. You whisper to your cup, "I miss warmth that didn't need to be earned," then sip. It feels real. The circle remains quiet for a long while, letting the steam carry your words into the sky. There's a superstition that says, if your steam rises straight up, the cold respects you. If it curls sideways, the wind is testing your resolve. And if it vanishes before your eyes, the cold has forgiven you. Yours lingers a bit, then disappears gently. You decide to take that as forgiveness, or at least a truce. Before the circle breaks, each soldier pours the last sip of their drink into the snow and whispers thanks. It's not about the tea, it's about offering a little of your warmth back to the world, a reminder that even in this endless winter, giving still matters. You rise, boots crunching on snow, and return to your tent with the ghost of pine and bark on your breath. Later that night, when the wind rattles the canvas and the frost climbs your blanket edge, you think back to that circle, the fire, the faces, the quiet, and the steam, still rising somewhere in your memory, like the last friendly thing between you and the dark. The sky is pink, not romantic pink, not sunset over Tuscany, pink. No, this is a kind of violent alien hue, like the sky has developed a rash. It stretches from horizon to horizon, casting the entire camp in a glow that can only be described as suspiciously festive. You step outside and hear the murmurs start. Snowburn's coming. You blink. Snowburn. A nearby corporal sees your confusion and mutters, "Don't stare at the sky too long. It'll hollow out your luck." Of course it will, because in the ever-growing web of winter soldier beliefs, the pink sky signals something rare and unsettling. A day when snow turns aggressive. Not just icy, not just painful, but personal. It begins with the air. Too warm to feel safe. Too cold to be comfortable. It's like the weather has forgotten which temperature it committed to. And then the light changes everything. Shadows vanish. Depth disappears. Snowbanks flatten into glowing, indistinct blobs. A soldier ahead of you stumbles into a drift he didn't see coming, shouts, "Ambush!" and is pulled out by three men laughing nervously, because when Snowburn hits, your perception is the first casualty. Veterans call it snow days. Historians still argue whether it's a form of snow blindness mixed with exhaustion or just mass suggestion amplified by really bad lighting. Either way, the camp reacts with practiced urgency. Scarves are pulled higher. Goggles, yes, actual goggles, are retrieved from the special "don't touch unless it's pink" crate. Lenses tinted amber, olive, or just dirt smeared glass. Doesn't matter. Anything to shield your eyes from the glow. You're handed a pair of wooden rimmed spectacles with wax paper stretched over the front. You ask if they work. "They're ceremonial," the soldier says. "It's about intent." "Ah, yes, that makes sense. Sort of. There are rules today, more than usual." No eating snow. Not that you ever wanted to, but it's now strictly forbidden. Snow holds grudges in this light, they say. No shaving. The pink glow can confuse the blade. You don't ask for clarification. Avoid reflections. Mirrors, puddles, even shiny spoons. Don't look. It's said the sky uses them to look back. That last one comes from a tale of Private Lenham, who once stared too long into his canteen lid during Snowburn. He claimed he saw his own face shivering in reverse. He hasn't blinked properly since. There's also the ritual of the stripe. Every soldier is encouraged to smear a line of ash, soot, or pine resin across their cheekbones. To break the gaze, someone whispers. You join in, because at this point, face painting feels downright practical. You glance up at the sky, just for a moment. Bad move. Your depth perception collapses. A tree seems 10 feet closer than it is. The snow appears to rise slightly, as if preparing to say something. You quickly look away. Someone else gasps. They stepped into the latrine pit again. You hold on to your tent pole and breathe. One soldier nearby closes his eyes completely and follows a rope tied from tent to mess hall. He moves like a man blindfolded in a dream, muttering the words, left foot, right faith, over and over. Some choose to stay indoors, riding out the pink apocalypse by candlelight and superstition. Others gather to hum low songs. There's one called The Snow Has Eyes, sung only during this strange sky. It's tuneless, haunting, and oddly catchy. Then, as abruptly as it began, the color starts to fade. The sky softens to lavender, then gray, then the familiar oppressive white. Someone exhales loudly, and just like that, Snowburn is over. You peel off the wax paper goggles. Your depth perception returns with a polite apology. A soldier to your left gently wipes the ash from his face and says, We made it. No one really knows what causes snowburn. Some blame sun hitting certain ice crystals. Others say it's a glitch in the fabric of winter. A day when reality loses contrast and the cold gains curiosity. But in its aftermath, the camp always does one thing, the regrounding. You must touch three earthly things, a tree, a stone, and a friend, to remind your soul where your body is. You start with a pine trunk, solid, sap-scented, then a smooth rock near the fire pit. Finally, you pat Jenkins on the back. He flinches, then nods. Still here, he says. And you are. The tents, the boots, the frostbitten mugs, all visible again. The snow is back to being impersonal and rude, just the way you prefer it. You lie down that night, weary from a day of blurry logic and dangerous light. And as you drift off, you murmur a quiet truth. I like the snow better when it ignores me. Your breath fogs in slow spirals. The sky is pale again, blank, expressionless, like it's run out of things to say. You've reached that point in the winter campaign where everything has become a ritual. Not because you're superstitious, okay, maybe a little, but because routines are sanity in disguise. And tonight is the last one, the final campfire. There's no speech, no fanfare, no brass band marching across the snow. Just a quiet gathering, wool against wool, the sound of logs splitting gently as the fire grows. This is known as the warming circle. And no, it's not just about temperature. It's about returning warmth to the world. Every soldier brings something. One offers his pine bundle, dried and tired, but still fragrant. Another contributes a stick he's carried since the start, marked with notches for each frostbite-free day. Someone places a sock, clean miraculously, and whispers, For the next poor fool. You contribute, Harold. Not forever, just for the night. He rests at the edge of the fire, glowing faintly. According to tradition, the warming circle is when soldiers give back to the cold, not as a peace offering, but as a form of strange, reluctant gratitude. Because while the cold may have bitten, shaken, and generally bullied you, it also taught you something: how to survive with others. It's easy to think of winter as an enemy, and maybe it is, but in this space, it becomes something else: a teacher, a mirror, a deeply sarcastic drill sergeant with icy eyebrows. Someone strums a frozen banjo, another taps a canteen like a drum. It's awful and wonderful and full of soul. You hum along, out of tune and proud. And then comes the final act, the sharing of the heat. Each person scoops a bit of fire warmed snow into a cup, just a few sips, and passes it around. It's symbolic, of course, barely warmer than tepid thought, but it's yours. Yours together. One soldier toasts to fingers that still wiggle, to boots that came back, and to not knowing what half of this meant. You sip. It tastes like closure and pine, always pine. Then, as the fire dwindles and men return to their tents, there's one last gesture. You turn to the woods, bow slightly, and say the ancient phrase, "Let the cold be cold and let me be me." Historians have no idea where that came from, but it works. You crawl into your bedroll for the last time, Harold snug beside you. The frost is quieter now, more background character than villain. The ghosts have taken their watch. The steam has risen and gone, and the snow still here, but somehow no longer alone. The wind softens, not gone, just hushed, like it knows this chapter is over and doesn't want to wake you. Your breath slows, your fingers relax. Somewhere in the distance, a pine creaks gently in its sleep. The fire is long since out, but a memory of its warmth lingers behind your knees, tucked beneath a wool layer and a very tired sock rock. You feel the weight of the day settle, not heavy, just real, just enough to remind you you've made it through. You don't think about the superstitions now. You don't worry if your boots will disappear, or whether your beard frost is spiraling in the wrong direction. You don't need to speak to the snow or whisper to the steam. Tonight, the quiet isn't watching, it's resting too. The tent flap sways once, then stills. A breeze nudges your cheek, cool but not cruel, and you begin to fade, not all at once, gently, like frost melting from a glove, like steam rising from a pine cup at dusk. The world doesn't need you to be sharp now. It needs you to soften, to drift, to let go of the ice around your thoughts. So take one last breath, deep and slow. Let it out. Let the cold be cold and let you be you. Sleep well, soldier. And if the snow whispers tonight, just smile. It knows you now. It remembers.